Hello, I am Dr. Sridhar K, consultant neonatologist. Welcome to my channel. We had a couple of videos on training in UK, and there were many questions from you about life in UK, the cost of living, the different aspects of life as such. So I thought I'll make a quick video on what it involves to be in UK as a family, what your general expenses would be, what kind of lifestyle you would expect there. Of course, your career choice would depend a lot on what you want to do, and that has been already discussed in the video by Dr. Alok. The options, the visa availability, the different tiers, and how long you can stay, and so on. So when you make your plan, you have to be considering all these aspects. And of course, it's a big move for the family. Most of you who live in the subcontinent, it's a big distance away, and you have to be away from your family in a totally different environment. The climate is going to be quite different as well. So I would break it down into a few subtopics. The first one is obviously the work, which we covered in my video on why you would consider working in UK, for example. So you have a streamlined approach, you have evidence-based practice, you have good support from the team, and team working as well as communication skills are focused on. So I'm not going to delve into detail on that aspect of it. The next important aspect is income, and obviously income in UK is going to be more than what you earn in India. If you are working in the Middle East already, you'll probably be looking at little less than what you get here. Of course, it is a significant taxation rate, and you can refer online in the HMRC websites for the taxation rates. However, for medical professionals, I mean, the basic slab of 22,000 with 22%, and then you enter into the 30%, and then you have the 40% slab. So most medics would get into the 30 to 40% slab. So if your regular salary for a registrar, say, is 4,500 on paper, you would get £3,000 take home, and that is with the out of hours allowance. So that's a good income. That's adequate to run the family in UK, even if you are the single earning member. And in terms of cost of living, we have mainly the house rent. That depends on how far from the city you plan to live. London is one of the biggest cities in the world. It's the 9th biggest in terms of population, and we have nearly 9 million in London itself, which means it's about the same size as the whole of the UAE in terms of population. Of course, we have more populous cities in India, like Delhi has 27 million, but in terms of size, it compares to Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and these on in terms of population. And of course, the cost of living in London, in and around London, is going to be 20 to 30% more compared to other areas. And actually, the NHS considers this, and there is a London weightage or London allowance, because you say we live in an expensive city, you have to have an additional allowance to your salary. So if you happen to work in that region, you would be expecting a little more than what you would expect in the other parts of UK. The rent ranges from, like, depending on a 2-bedroom townhouse, or if you go into the suburbs, you can get a villa kind of standalone house, and that would be in the range of 800 to 1,500, depending on which part of the city you live or suburbs you live. This would apply to most regions. Like in Glasgow, it will be around 800 to 1,000, and you can live in the surrounding smaller villages and commute, and that will be a little less expensive. You will get bigger properties, bigger garden, and more family fun. So if your work pattern allows you, you can live in such a place. And the school proximity is one of the key decisions you take when you decide to take a school. And obviously, the allotment of the schools in UK, if you are in primary school, you probably go for council schools, which you have to choose the nature of the school, the feedback, and so on. And you may choose a school where you could continue into secondary school also. I'll come to schooling next, of course, but when you choose the house, you have to look into the school as well. When you talk of the house, you have additional expenses like the council tax. So this is the kind of maintenance for the house, removing of your waste, the waste disposal system, you have the road maintenance and everything. So the council is a local corporation kind of arrangement, and you have to pay, the tenant has to pay the council tax in UK, and this will come, depending on the size of the property, around £40 a month or so. And in terms of gas and electricity bills. I mean, the gas bills are going to be high in the winter. Obviously, you use gas central heating in most of the houses, and it's a boiler system. The boiler pumps hot water into the radiators which are there in each room. You can regulate the radiators individually, and you can keep the heat setting as you want. You can turn it off when you don't want. You can have a timer on the boiler which will regulate the time, and you have to learn cost effective ways of doing it, and you also have to consider insulating. You may wear an additional jumper to reduce the heater output and so on, but the heating bills are quite high in the winter, and in the summer months it's not much. The gas and electricity bills together in the summer will be around 50-60 pounds, while in winter it can cross 100 pounds, so it's a significant expense. And the telephone bill is similar to any other country. You have the telephone contracts for the mobile phone, you have a separate contract for the landline, and they are not too expensive. With 20 pounds a month each you can manage. Same telephone and cable network come together. You have different options, and it's similar to every country. You have a set-top box, and you have Sky, and you have BT and so on. You have the home hub where you can record, and the set-top box which allows recording of programs, which allows rewinding and everything. Now of course with the online options, people may choose to just use Netflix or something like that, so those expenses are not very high. You have the TV licensing, which is around 10 to 15 pounds a month, and that is a compulsory charge for anyone who owns a television at home. That is because BBC is given free of charge by the government. You have your gym expenses. For example, if you pay, it will be around 20-25 pounds a month. And the children schooling is the other important aspect. So when you come to schooling, primary schools, most of the council schools are good, and you can just keep them in the nearby school. As I said, you may choose your house depending on which area you want to live in and which school you want to select. Proximity to work is one aspect, the school falling in a good area is another aspect. So these are things you would consider when you decide on the school. Primary school is free if you go for the council schools. The nurseries are expensive, so if you are working and you need childcare, it will knock off 600-700 pounds a month. So childcare is very expensive. You do get some benefits from the NHS, part of it is refunded, but still it is expensive. So the less you utilize, and after 3 years of age, the government offers 2.5 hours of free nursery sessions, and private nurseries may be included in that as well, but the rest of it you will have to pay. So if you have a nanny, or if you have a parent who can help you, that would reduce that cost. Of course, it's a big expense. And primary schools, as I said, can be free. The secondary school, you can take the council option, which is free, but most of the doctors prefer to send their children to secondary school in private sector, because you have more quality reassurance, and you have also the problems of adolescents as they grow up. So when you are in the primary school, you may have more exposure to drugs, for example, or alcohol, because of your peer group, and for that reason we may prefer to keep the children, if you can afford, in the private sector. Of course, that's not a guarantee that you would be keeping them away. You have to still monitor. In terms of cost of living in day-to-day things, I mean, food, eating out can be a little more expensive, but you have to regulate how much you do it. Nightlife depends on your choice as well. Travel is expensive, but if you have your own car, it's fairly cost effective. Fuel is a little more expensive, but again, it's the same. You have your vehicle licensing, you have your MOT, you have your insurance. So if you own your own car, you have the associated expense. It will come to around 700-800 pounds a year with these taxes. And train travel, if you book it in advance, it's cheaper. So if you know when you're traveling and you book it, same with the hotel stays as well. You have cost effective hotels like Travelodge, where you have discounts frequently if you book it more than 21 days ahead of time. Otherwise it's about 60 pounds a night most of the time. So you have a reasonable quality. If you have penchant for South Indian food or specific types of food, you may not get it everywhere. London, of course, is having everything, but other cities you'll have very limited options like that, and many people travel to London just to taste their home food. And there are shops in every suburb which sell goods from Middle East or Asian backgrounds, and so you would find things. You have to locate them, you have to network with your friends there. And so overall lifestyle in UK is good, The weather is quite cold, and if you don't like windy cold weather, it's not ideal, but again you'll get used to it. You have jackets, you have your gloves and mufflers and everything, and when you go out you'll be prepared. The snowy weather, it can be slippery. You have to have good shoes for it so you don't fall down. The cars come with winter tires. Sometimes you may have to buy them in areas where you're prone to snowing, but it's not as bad as US or Canada. So you have maybe 5 or 6 days of snow at the most. Your heating, as I said, indoors, if you keep the heating well set, you wouldn't feel much in the winter as well. Wind is a problem in north of England and Scotland, Ireland and so on. In south of England, London area is not too bad, so you would be finding a reasonably pleasant weather most of the year in the south of England. So if you want sunny weather, you can choose to be in those areas. So this gives you an overview. The people are very nice. Of course, people are worried about racism and so on. It's much less than what you would think. I've heard that it's much worse in US compared to UK. People are understanding, people are very polite. Of course, people are getting more tense recently with various communal attacks and so on, but you shouldn't be affected. Drugs and alcohol are a problem in some places, and you have to learn to avoid eye contact with adolescents if they are in a group, and just walk away. Avoid going out alone too late in the evenings. You have to be careful and you have to avoid trouble. That's like any other place. You do have to be aware that such problems exist, especially when your children grow up there. You have to monitor their friend group and so on. So this is just a summary. I hope it's useful, and if you find it useful, please do share. If you have any questions, you can put in the comment section as well. I hope this will help any professional really who is thinking of relocating to UK, not just doctors. So do share it with everyone you feel like. Thank you.